11 minutes past the hour. Here we are with Exploring the Illuminati Occult Part 46. The Nazi-Masonic roots of Islamic hate is going to be a very controversial topic. Beware, but here we are, Leo and Christy Zagami, for our weekly exploration.
Yay! Hi, everyone.
Hello, everybody. Let's thank our sponsors who have made possible this broadcast.
Okay, so thank you, everybody, for sponsoring this week. This week we have Jason Strickland, Adrian Tiaha. Hope I said that okay. Malgarazada. I'm sorry, I say your name every week. Malgarazada Minta. Hi. Bjorn Vogel and Bruce Kodish and Philippe Beller. Thank you very much.
Bjorn. I think it's
Bjorn. Didn't I say that?
Bjorn. It's Bjorn.
Bjorn.
Okay. Welcome.
I'm American. I can't help it.
Welcome to the Leo Zagami Show. Leo and Christy Zagami, the Nazi-Masonic roots of Islamic propaganda. Bruce Kodish also. We have thanked Bruce. We thank everybody, basically. You have made possible this broadcast.
And everybody who bought the book, too. Thank you.
Yes, the books. Actually, can you pick me up the books over there? We should be able to pick up a few books so we can show them to the audience, especially the latest one, Volume 9. Very important book, Volume 9. For those who are interested, is on top there. Okay. No worries. Yes, just a second.
Volume 8, Volume 9.
all the volumes. Okay, Volume 9 is very important. Volume 8, this is all about the Sabbatean, Frankist.
That one's important too.
Of course, Volume 6.66. There is a lot of talk about artificial intelligence these days, but we started to define it as cyber Satan with this book, and then of course it expanded with Volume 7, but it completes with Volume 9 that topic. Let's say that Volume 6, Volume 7, and Volume 7, which is also available on hard copy, is a hard copy, hardback. It's like a trilogy in itself dedicated to cyber Satan. And then we have, of course, Christie's books.
This one, and this is my old cover. I have an old book. I have to get a new one.
Okay.
They always give them away.
Volume 1 and 2.
It doesn't look like this. I took my face off, and then this is Volume 1. They're kind of funny. They're interesting. It's not as boring as you would think.
That's good. That's good. That's good. Absolutely. So if you want to support our show, please purchase one of these books and put them under your Christmas tree during the festivities. And if you want, send us a photo and we will show it here during the show. You can send it to us at ordoilluminatoruniversalis@gmail.com. Okay, it might seem antithetic, the fact that the title of this show today is basically, the Nazi-Masonic roots of Islamic hate, when in reality we know that Nazism persecuted Freemasonry, but it wasn't always that way, of course, because it also helped the rise of Freemasonry, the rise of Nazism. Let's say that there were some connections with what some Masonic historians would deem as irregular Freemasonry, but the regularity of Freemasonry is always a very subject. It's a matter, a very contested matter, because it's about Masonic recognition rather than the existence or the practice of that Masonic ritual. So the fact that today I have, first of all, accumulated Nazism and Freemasonry is not because of my ignorance. I'm some kind of mad conspiracy theory here, mixing everything up, because I know exactly that Himmler and the SS, after the rise of Nazism, went around Europe raiding all the various Masonic libraries and so on, keeping even for many decades these books that were eventually given back to their own Grand Lodges. But there is a problem here. There is the roots also connected to Freemasonry within the Middle East. The fact that we talk about Islamic hate here is also very important. So, Christy, what do you know about this subject? Do you know anything about this subject? Will this show in some way illuminate you?
I'm sure your shows always do. But you did that other show. Wasn't there a show about something that was kind of, I don't know.
Well,
some Nazi thing.
No, well, we did definitely shows that talked about the occult origins of Nazism, the esoteric practices within the Nazi regime. We did these shows already. And so for those people who are maybe following us from Bandit Video and have not all the various episodes of Exploring the Illuminati Occult Part 46, remember, you can find them on my channel on YouTube. You can also find them now. I also broadcast regularly on Facebook, but it's something we have been doing for the last few months. We didn't used to do that. So you can find all the various parts of Exploring the Illuminati, and you can, of course, go. And this is a good suggestion, Chrissy, because then people can compare. Also, some names will be mentioned again today. So
I don't know anything about what you're going to talk about at all. Just from reading your books, if you touched on it, I know you touched on these topics in your books. So
okay, now first of all, what I have to do here is just to transfer some data from one computer to the other, so I can show you also video that I downloaded, which I think would be perfect on opening today's show. So this is something that I'm going to be doing now, and of course, it's going to take just a couple of seconds. In the meantime, I want to warn you, it's a very complex matter. The history of the Sabbatean Frankist history in secret societies at one point went two ways. One way, it influenced people like Madame Blavatsky, the rise of the Theosophical Society. The very same people, though, influenced also in the East, especially in the Middle East, the birth of what will become something much more sinister in a way, even if they're both sinister, because even the Theosophical Society, as innocent as it can appear, it's sinister and resides, of course, as we know, also with some people nowadays in the United Nations. Now, here we are talking about the Sabbatean Frankist influence amongst the Islamic world. And this, of course, this is going to be a very controversial topic, but also it's going to be a topic that very few of you, and here I turned off the microphone a second. I will be putting it back on in a second, because this is very important here that I get this right, because I want to open with one specific statement by Benjamin Netanyahu. And from this statement, we will go back in time, and we will go back in time and we will show links that people will find amazing. Also, because at the end of the day, we knew already from our past episodes, the one on the roots of Nazism, the influence, the great influence of the Theosophical Society within the birth of Nazism. But then we have the same people involved with the birth of the Islamic, of what is the Islamic Brotherhood, what is basically the starting point for something. Here, of course, we are now, the audio, it's okay, perfect, great to know that. Let's start with this statement, and then we will unfold all the knowledge. I mean, here we're not, you don't want to necessarily take sides like everybody's doing out of ignorance. We would like to really understand things so that people can also make their own opinions based on facts, not on speculations. So here we have a very controversial statement from 2015 by Netanyahu.
Attack. Other attacks on the Jewish community in 1920, 1921, 1929 were instigated by a call of the Mufti of Jerusalem, Hajj Amin al-Husseini, who was later sought for war crimes in the Nuremberg trials because he had a central role in fomenting the final solution. He flew to Berlin. Hitler didn't want to exterminate the Jews at the time. He wanted to expel the Jews. And Hajj Amin al-Husseini went to Hitler and said, if you expel them, they'll all come here. So what should I do with them? He asked. He said, burn them.
Well, the man that Benjamin Netanyahu is referring to is Hajj Amin al-Hussein, who you can see pictured there. He was the Grand Mufti of Jerusalem during the Holocaust. There have been passionate responses to these comments by Benjamin Netanyahu. Here's the Israeli opposition leader, Isaac Herzog, saying, this is a dangerous historical distortion. I demand Netanyahu correct it immediately. He went on to say it minimizes the Holocaust, Nazism, and Hitler's part in our people's terrible disaster. There's another interesting detail here too from the Reuters bureau chief in Israel. You can see a tweet here quoting a German government spokesperson in Israel who reiterates that with regards to the Holocaust, responsibility is ours. There's no need to change the view on that.
Well, today we're going to understand that maybe Netanyahu was onto something there. And it's, of course, this a very gray area of history. When it comes to Amin al-Hussein, though, there is actually, once you study the figure, you know what this guy has done, there is actually no reason to doubt what Benjamin Netanyahu said. And so it's very important for me to introduce you this figure in the proper way. Great synthesis, I must say, of Mohammed Ahmed al-Hussein, an introduction of this figure who was born in 1897, died in 1974. So he died actually quite recently. And so he was able to really influence a lot. I mean, this guy was alive enough to do some serious damage with what he did, especially with his very particular relationship that he had with various Nazis. Beginning in 1933, al-Hussein regularly met with local Nazi representatives and openly expressed admiration for Hitler's ideas. During these meetings, he served as a liaison for the Muslim Brotherhood to the Nazis. Now, who founded, though, the Muslim Brotherhood? Because here, when I say the Nazi-Masonic roots, I'm not speculating here. We are basing our show on hard facts, okay? The Mufti was not correct simply because you can't condemn a whole race of people. That is absolutely absurd, and who says this is, of course, partaking of these criminal acts. I think that today the ignorance which I hear regularly from people fueled with anti-Semitism needs to be addressed. So this guy, his opposition to the British peaked during the 1936-1939 Arab revolt in Palestine. I'm talking about Mohammed Amin al-Husseini, which we have just seen in this introduction to his figure. And of course, we can put on the screen also his famous image here with Adolf Hitler, next to Adolf Hitler, discussing also the final solution for the Jews. So this is the core of all evil, because for hundreds of years, Jews had been left alone, had lived in relative peace in the Ottoman Empire. So today we want to really understand and make you understand as well what has happened. In 1937, Mohammed Amin al-Hussein evaded his arrest warrant, fleeing to Palestine, and took refuge later on in the French Mandate of Lebanon. You remember that following the Picot Agreement, there were various spheres of influence, and the French have always had a sphere of influence over Lebanon and the Kingdom of Iraq until he established himself, imagine, out of all places, he established himself in fascist Italy and Nazi Germany, because, of course, those people wanted to fight the British, and so and wanted to also, you see, what happened here is, following the fall of the Ottoman Empire, uncertainty grown in the Arab world, and of course the European power players, the great manipulators like Great Britain, and also Germany. Germany, of course, was resentful of the Balfour Agreement, of the fact that there was this new rising Zionist movement. And at this point, this guy started a collaboration with both Italy and Germany, making propagandistic radio broadcasts and actively helping the Nazi recruit Bosnian Muslims for the Waffen-SS. So he recruited and created a whole divisions of Islamic people. Of course, in Bosnia, they are quite white skinned, but they're still Muslims, on the grounds that they shared four principles: family, order, the leader, and faith. On meeting Adolf Hitler, he requested backing for Arab independence and support in opposing the establishment in Palestine of a Jewish national home. Upon the end of the war, he came under French protection and then sought refuge in Cairo to avoid persecution for war crimes, as also suggested by Netanyahu himself. So this guy, was he a Freemason? Well, we can't really say that for sure, but he came and he was actually collaborating directly with Freemasons, and basically the Muslim Brotherhood that was created within Egyptian Freemasonry supported him. So we have to understand that the Muslim Brotherhood is basically Freemasonry. It was created by a guy who was known Freemason. Muhammad Amin al-Hussein might have not been a Freemason, but the guy who created and came from the Salafi movement, which of course the Salafi movement is a part of Islam that gave birth to Salafi Judaism. So Al-Qaeda and all that comes from this. So it's very important here to understand where is all this hate, where is all this hate coming from. And so there is a figure that now I'm going to show you that connects on one side Madame Blavatsky, Theosophical Society, on the other side the rise of the future Islamo-fascist, of the future people like Hassan al-Banna, who actively worked with the Grand Mufti al-Husseini. So here it's very important to understand that the founder of the Muslim Brotherhood was a Freemason named Hassan al-Banna, born in 1906, who developed his project from the influence of three Salafi reformers. But the Salafis invite people to be very pious and very caste and all that. But these people were not at all on top. They used the religion, and they openly said that within their own circles to manipulate the masses, while they will follow an atheist concept and have fun. And still to this day, they all go to Dubai, to the Emirates, wherever, and they have their great parties where the majority of people have to live their pious life, inshallah, inshallah, alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah. But these people are literally demons, because what they're doing is contrary to even to their own faith, to the Sunnah, and to the whole concept of the religion. Now, there is also Shiite Islam, and that's going to come in also at some point here of our discussion. But it's very important to realize where we are heading here, because the roots of this hate is something that was born in early June 1946. El-Hussein, Amin el-Hussein, the Grand Mufti of Jerusalem, which I showed you with Adolf Hitler, escaped from a year of pleasant house arrest in France. It wasn't that bad, and flew to Cairo. Now, already the fact that he went to France makes us think that probably he was supported by the Grand Orient of France, as, of course, the other members of the Muslim Brotherhood that was created in Egypt. Now, Hussein was referred at the time as the Mufti. He was internationally known as a collaborator with Nazi Germany as a result of his meeting with Adolf Hitler in Berlin in November 1941. But he also was very close to Himmler. And like we said, he participated also to propagandistic broadcast and so on. Husseini was a key figure in the ideological and political fusion between Nazism and Islamism. In that critical moment of 1941-1945, which millions of Jews were sent to the concentration camps and died, of course. And so their idea was to have a united Arab state rather than a separate group of sovereign states. This was the original idea. On June 1946, when Hassan al-Banna, which now I'm going to show you, penned the following words for the welcome home to Husseini. So let's see who this Hassan al-Banna is, because this is another piece of the puzzle to arrive directly to the same people that in the end fomented the birth of Nazism, with Rudolf von Sembotendorf, for example, in Turkey, part of the Ottoman Empire, and of course then also fomented the Holocaust. So here we are really very critical, very important to get these facts right. And also it's very important to understand why there's no clarity here, even from Muslim scholars, because being there the involvement of Freemasonry, which is so unpopular nowadays in the Middle East, and also with all of what happened later on, because of course then there was the spread of the protocols of the Sages of Zion, which we discussed in a special here at the Illuminati Occult Exploration that we do every week, and I advise you to go and check it out. But this figure, which will bring us directly to the heart of Egyptian Freemasonry, is this one here, and I want to show you, because he was dealing directly with the Mufti. The Mufti was basically the representatives of the Brotherhood, which this guy created, and it wasn't like, I mean, this organization nowadays has been declared illegal in Egypt, Russia, many countries, but up until when I visited Egypt still in 2003, they had a whole building. They actually, in the period of 2003, they had several members of parliament who were members of their organization. So on June 11, 1946, Hassan al-Banna, the leader of the Muslim Brotherhood, which had so much influence since then, and of course is at the basis of the foundation of Hamas and many other militant jihadist groups, wrote, Ali Khan, Ali's Muslim and all Arabs requested the Arab League, on which Arab hopes are pinned, to declare that the Mufti is welcome to stay in Arab country he may choose. Now, Christy, will you lead us with reading this part, please?
Mufti is welcome to stay in any Arab country he may choose, and that great welcome should be extended to him wherever he goes as a sign of appreciation for his great services for the glory of Islam and the Arabs. The hearts of the Arabs palpitated with joy at hearing that Mufti had succeeded in reaching an Arab country. The news sounded like thunder in the ears of some American, British, and Jewish tyrants. The lion is at last free, and he will roam the Arabian jungle to clear it of wolves. Now,
this great leader, great of course for them, after many years of exile, came back. Some Zionist papers in Egypt were actually denouncing the fact that the Mufti was back after his exile. We cannot blame them, because you have to understand that the Mufti was leading this Arab struggle with the most anti-Semitic. Still to this day, there is historians that are arguing, was this guy simply opposing was it something to do with the geopolitical struggle, or was it something more actually anti-Semitic? So Hitler and Mussolini didn't frighten him. This is what look what al-Banna said to him in his letter here. Christine?
Hitler and Mussolini's defeat did not frighten you. Your hair did not turn gray of fright, and you are still of life and fight. What a hero, what a miracle of a man. We wish to know what the Arab youth, cabinet ministers, rich men, and princes of Palestine, Syria, Iraq, Tunis, Morocco, and Tripoli are going to do to be worthy of this hero. Yes, this hero who challenged an empire and fought Zionism with the help of Hitler and Germany. Germany and Hitler are gone, but Amin al-Husseini will continue the struggle.
So this is what al-Banna himself said, and he was actually an ardent admirer of Hitler since he first read Mein Kampf. You have to understand, Mein Kampf start to circulate even in other Muslim countries, even in the Shiite world. That was published in Iran. And then Al-Banna even compared, imagine, this Mufti who inspired the Holocaust to Mohammed and Christ. So here we are really at the delirium. But what is the connection of Al-Banna with the Freemasons? He was a Freemason. He was confirmed. Of course, he was a Freemason. He was coming from a background that leads us to another important figure, which is Jamal al-Din al-Afghani, which is a very important figure that will lead us directly to Madame Blavatsky and to all the Masonic world. But before that, let's understand who confirmed, because, when you are saying this guy is a Freemason, you want to know who confirmed his Masonic, and it was confirmed by an important figure who actually had some serious problems because of his revelations. I'm talking about Said Qutb. This guy, Said Ibrahim Usaid, this guy here, came out and confirmed that, and he was a senior member of the Muslim Brotherhood, saying that Al-Banna had been, his predecessor, had been a Freemason. Here we have this guy here. So this guy confirmed in writing that, and he is considered as the father of Salafi jihadism, the religio-political doctrine that underpins the ideological roots of global jihadist organizations such as Al-Qaeda and ISIS, or ISIL, I don't want to call it. So, and he was a leading member of the Egyptian Brotherhood in 50s and 90s. Very important we understand who is behind the figure of Hassan, Imam Hassan al-Banna, who basically we have been discussing, and who is very important because the founder of this Muslim Brotherhood, which is probably really the one of the most important organizations in the Islamic world, he was a student of another Freemason, Muhammad Rashid Rida. Now, Rashid Rida is another guy. You will never say this guy is a Freemason. You will think that this guy looks like another camel jockey of sorts. No, he is basically, he was himself also a Freemason. And these people were also very close to the other figure, which I'm gonna talk about in a second. But this guy here influenced profoundly Al-Banna, and he was a student of Muhammad Abdu, the most prominent student of Al-Afghani. So it all brings us back to a guy called Al-Afghani. So let's go and see who was this Al-Afghani, because this Al-Afghani is going to bring us directly to the Sabbatean Frankists and directly to the core of this problem. So here, okay, we've been talking for the last 100 years about Islamic fundamentalism. But let it be very clear, until 110 years ago, 100 years ago, actually, to be very precise, till the 1920s, there wasn't, until the beginning of last century, there was no anti-Semitism within Islamic countries. There was peace, prosperity, tranquility. Okay, there was a problem. The demo, what does that mean? It means that simply the non-Islamic people will have a status that was deemed as inferior. But having said that, the status didn't compromise their life, their work. Of course, they always had the imposition of not being able to marry Islamic women. Okay, fine. But nobody will persecute them. Things started to change when the West pushed and manipulated and created things like the ones I'm showing you right now, because now we are at the very basis of the creation of these currents that have defined, let's say, the last period of the Ottoman Empire. And then, of course, after the fall of the Ottoman Empire, the rise of something different, with the Germans trying to fight the English, using, of course, the Arabs against the Jews as something that, and of course, there was the Holocaust. There was also the push towards bringing millions of Jews in the Holy Land. But all this was, of course, orchestrated, as we have also discussed in the past. So it's very important to understand what happened, because the German policy was in the 1920s to neutralize the perceived propaganda benefits that Britain had reaped with the Balfour Declaration, in which they said that the Jews should have a land and should go and back to then it was decided it was the land that we call Palestine and Israel now, but Palestine didn't really exist, because Palestine didn't really exist like many other countries didn't really exist at the time. There was the fact that there was a falling Ottoman Empire, substituted then by a variety of things that came together in that period, in which there was a war that was fought, and it was fought first of all by the falling Ottoman Empire, that then, of course, arose with a new Turkey, with another Freemason, Kemal Atatürk, with a new pan-Islamism. But initially the young Turks that actually created the modern Turkey were not immediately embracing pan-Islamism. They were not even embracing that much Islam, to tell you the truth. They were actually quite leveling what Islam had done at the time of the Ottoman Empire, because they wanted to embrace modernism. However, a figure that really central to our understanding of this future Islamic hate is, of course, this Jamal al-Din Afghani, and we will show an image of him so you have an idea. Is from this guy that then we will arrive all the way down to Hitler. So it's like Afghani was inspirational to some extent. I'm going to see if I can find a picture here on the internet, just so you can have a look at. Now, there's a lot to say about this guy, because this guy is behind also the Brotherhood of Luxor, Brotherhood of Light. We are at the crossroads, like I said before, of the two great influences of the Sabbatean Frankists within the West, that developed Theosophy, and then from there you have the OTO, all the other thing, modern Satanism, and Islam, in which it ruined the peaceful approach of Islam, and in exchange of something diabolic that, of course, has been pushed and has been manipulated up to these days. Here I'm going to show you the photo of this guy, and we're going to discuss, of course, this figure, because he was a friend of Madame Blavatsky, and he is one of the most influential people in the late 19th century, in order to promote its geostrategic plans for the Middle East in general and for the Suez Canal in Egypt. In particular, the British establishment, especially the British Foreign Secretary Lord Salisbury and Lord Churchill, used Salafism, and its founder, because he was the founder of Salafism, Jamal al-Din al-Afghani. And he was a Freemason. Al-Afghani believed in the need for a moralistic and legalistic religion for the management of the masses.
Freemasonry?
Well, look, reserving a subtle atheistic truth for the elite. In Egypt, he initially joined the Star of the East Lodge, which was founded in Cairo in 1871 and belonged to the jurisdiction of the United Lodge of England. But things didn't really go so well for him in that context, and now I will explain you why. And then he moved to the Grand Orient of France. Now, it's quite incredible that a guy who has founded a movement within Islam, which preaches this pious Islam, going back to the veil and all this BS, in reality was a Freemason who was doing it so he could manipulate the masses while reserving, I repeat, a subtle atheistic truth for the elite. Now, the British vice consul in Cairo, Raphael Borg, himself a Mason, urged Al-Afghani and his followers to join the Star of the East Lodge. In 1878, Al-Afghani became the worshipful master of that lodge, whose membership included prominent members of the Egyptian elite such as Tevfik Pasha, Sharif Pasha, and also Butrus Pasha Gali, who was an ancestor of Butrus Gali and Rauf Gali, which was my friend I visited in Egypt in 2003. And in fact, they brought me and showed me also the building of the Muslim Brotherhood, which was on the Nile before the buildings that were for all the various senators and stuff. So at the time, they had a very impressive building, the Muslim Brotherhood. When Afghani superiors in the Scottish Rite who were using him, because a lot of this information also is printed by this book, excellent book by Freemason Angel Miller, for example. There is also interesting material that you can find on the book Richard Landes' Can the Whole World Be Wrong? These are books I'm just suggesting en passé in this reportage of ours today. Now, this lodge didn't work out, apart from the fact that the Scottish Rite became aware of his atheistic tendencies, and you shouldn't be atheistic if you are into regular Freemasonry. Plus, there is a story that is actually reported here, which is very interesting, in which it says that basically he walked out of he didn't want to be with the United Lodge of England anymore after the Crown Prince arrived in visit in Egypt and was treated as a Crown Prince. Even in a lodge, he was given proposed, you know how powerful the British royal family, the English royal family is in Freemasonry, and so of course they were received. Now I would like you to read here this part from here to here, these two paragraphs.
Okay. Political discussion had long been taboo in Freemasonry, at least in English-speaking countries, even if lodges have sometimes indulged in such conversation.
This was in Egypt, just so you know.
And even if some others have found themselves involved in revolutionary activity, such as was the cause in the lead up to and during the Mexican War of Independence in 1810 through 1821. For Al-Afghani, unwillingness to even discuss politics exposed cowardice. He was further enraged by the reverence shown to the Grand Master for England, the Prince of Wales, who visited Cairo in both 1875 and 1876 and was addressed inside the lodge as Crown Prince. Not long after this time, the radical thinker began to withdraw from Egypt's loose network of lodges and formed a national lodge of his own. It was formerly affiliated with the Grand Lodge, the Grand Orient of France, one of the most liberal Masonic jurisdictions.
This is very interesting.
But Al-Afghani may have viewed it as potentially the most revolutionary.
Before you go, because I want to go on with this, because it is interesting, I would like to remind our viewers that in the past we have discussed how in the same period the French Grand Orient inspired also the future Russian revolutionaries, Lenin, Trotsky. So it's like it became really like the lab. I mean, we know the extreme influence that France had at that time. It was considered the center of culture. All the latest fashions in food, in everything, was always coming from France. So the aristocracy used to talk French rather than English as a common language. So this is also very important, guys, because we find another figure that will change, unfortunately for the worse, the Middle East coming from France. That figure, and here I want to, before we pass, that figure, of course, is the Ayatollah Khomeini.
Ayatollah Khomeini.
Can you read this part?
I remember him from the 80s.
Yes.
Ruhollah Mousavi Khomeini, the man that would one day rise to become supreme leader of the Islamic Republic of Iran, was born on September 24th, 1902 in the small town of Khomein in central Persia. His father, a minor landowner and cleric who had studied in Najaf, the Shiite holy city of Iraq, was killed by local bandits when Khomeini was just a few months old in early 1903. The family was moderately wealthy, and though the responsibility of caring for him fell to his mother and her sister-in-law, Khomeini's childhood was relatively idyllic. The house, do you want me to keep on? The house in which his family lived was a spacious two-story building with balconies, 2 watchtowers, a large garden, and 3 courtyards. Khomeini attended a local elementary school until
so I mean, up until here it seems all very innocent, all very great, but then the things of course changed very much. He was a dedicated student, but at one point he changes, and of course that change will bring him in contact with certain orders. Now Sufi orders are very common in the Middle East. They're common in Shia Islam. They're common in Sunni Islam. Definitely, they influence even Khomeini. But the interesting thing about Khomeini was that, of course, then his revolution took some political overtones that were clearly leftist. Clearly. I mean, still to this day, the Iranian society that has abandoned the Shah, has finished the era that was, the great empire of Persia, embraced this overly religious approach. And this overly religious approach, this Islamic reform of its society, we see what is producing still to this day, that monstrosity that of course we have. But it's interesting how Khomeini basically was not, coming from there. He was coming from the West when the revolution started, and of course he changed and he started to discuss things as the supreme leader who wanted to reconcile branches of Islamic knowledge, which of course in turn were also connected to secret societies. We know that the Shiite world through the sect, the Ismaili sect, is connected to that very old heresy that produced the Ashashin, this cult, the sect of the Ashashin. They used to smoke hashish, they used to be killers, they used to be extremists. It's important, though, to realize that this extremism didn't exist before. I mean, it was people might have embraced the Islamic religion, but not the literalist approach to Islamic religious scriptures that the Salafism manifested. If it wasn't for the Salafi movement, probably we will not have arrived even to a change within the that didn't touch only the Muslim Brotherhood or the Sunni world, but in turn the change also the Shiite world, which you literally, these two words have never, they have always been conflictual one with the other. Now, this Freemason that we discussed, this figure of Freemasonry that we have discussed, which is at the basis of these problems that we have today, founded, once he went out of the United Lodge of England, his national lodge, the Mafilan Batina, it was called, under the auspice of the Grand Orient of France. And it was basically in this context that his form of Freemasonry was embraced by a lot of people that, of course, were kind of, they understood, he understood that the Grand Orient would let him talk about politics, would let him be more atheistic, because he was atheistic, but he was preaching religion for the masses.
Yeah.
So the ones that could manipulate the future of society could meet in this close environment and continue to do it. And so during his career, he was first a Russian asset, intelligence asset. This guy we are discussing now, for those who don't know, is Jamal al-Din al-Afghani, the founder of Salafism. And Salafism is a literary approach to Islamic religious scriptures, for those who don't know. He was connected to a guy called Wilfred Scowen Blunt, who was a British secret agent and an Orientalist, who was given the responsibility by the Masonic authorities, in particular by the ancient and accepted Scottish Rite, to organize Masonic lodges in the whole of the Middle East and in Persia, in order to operate as intelligence hubs and non-political networks. And there was also the involvement of another guy called Edward G. Brown, who was a Great Britain leading Orientalist in the 19th century. And in 1885, Al-Afghani went to London together with Wilfred Scowen Blunt, and he stayed there for 3 months. Al-Afghani and his network were supporting the British Empire against the Ottomans. It was, of course, the end of the Ottoman Empire, but the Ottoman Empire was still in existence back then and controlled the whole of the Middle East. And of course, the English wanted to crack that control, wanted to infiltrate it, wanted to create that crisis that will eventually manifest with the end of the Ottoman Empire. In 1899, Mohammed Abdu, who was the most prominent student of Al-Afghani and a member of the aforementioned Star of the East Lodge in Cairo, was appointed as the Grand Mufti of Egypt, the same office that then later on that other guy who met with Adolf Hitler will have. And was imposed as the leading authority of Islamic law by none other than the first Earl of Grummer, who was Great Britain's Consul General at the time, Lord Evelyn Baring, first Earl of Grummer. So this was during the British occupation of Egypt. I also had some relatives who were working there in the intelligence at that time. I have some writings. You remember my grandmother? Maybe. So according to, and this here becomes interesting because here we connect everything. So sorry if it might be a bit complex, but this is very important. According to K. Paul Johnson, who is a retired public library director from South Virginia and a writer on modern Western esotericism as well as North Carolina history, so an academic, in the Master's Review, Elena Petrovna Blavatsky, H.P. Blavatsky, as we call her, we have all these masters that are usually considered as ascended, as imaginary at times, as almost entities. But in reality, there is a character in particular called the Seraphis Bey, which basically written Serapis, and is regarded in Theosophy as one of the masters of the ancient wisdom. Okay? Now, the thing is that this master, who then said his own master was Moria, which is also spelled Mauria, is one of the masters of the ancient wisdom, also in the Theosophical beliefs. The fact is that, according to K. Paul Johnson, in reality, he was a real person, and he was Jamal Afghani. Jamal Afghani is basically a perpetuated leader of an order named the Brotherhood of Luxor. The Brotherhood of Luxor, then the Schismatic Brotherhood of Light inspired the birth of the OTO. It goes on a whole different direction. So you see, there is, I mean, I think that even people within the Islamic world will be horrified to know that they are associated with figures like that. But you have to understand that Blavatsky spent a lot of time in Cairo. She actually founded briefly another organization before she founded Theosophy, I think in 1871, so 4 years before she founded Theosophical Society. And she was very interested in spiritism, smoking a lot of hashish, which she did profusely. Afghani was introduced to the Star of the East Lodge, of which he became the leader, by its founder called Raphael Borg, who was the British Council in Cairo. Now, these are not connections that are just loose. Now you're going to see there is a direct connection between Afghani and Blavatsky. Afghani's friend was a Sabbatean Jewish Italian actor from Cairo named James Sanua. And this James Sanua, who with his girlfriend Lydia Pashkov and their friend Lady Jane Digby, were all part of this order they created in 1871 there in Cairo, and they were all experimenting and doing evocations, things, and all kinds of. So, as Jocelyn Godwin, who does some excellent research, some excellent books, said in the Theosophical Enlightenment, quote, and here I let Christy read it.
If we interpret the Brotherhood of Luxor I can't really read.
To refer to the coterie of exoterists and magicians that Blavatsky knew and worked with in Egypt, then we should probably count Sanwa and Jamaldin as members. Now, when I went to Cairo as a guest of a descendant, of course, of somebody who was in the lodge, because the Butrus Gali family guested me in 2003, and of course, Rauf is a descendant of Butrus Pasha Gali, and these are very important families, patrons of the Coptic Church and all the rest. I was able to hear a lot of stories about this brotherhood, the Brotherhood of Luxor. I really wanted to know if they existed. And they told me they not only existed, but they possessed and they kept in secret the eye of Nefertiti.
What? Really?
Now, the statue of Nefertiti, as we know, the silhouette, whatever, of Nefertiti.
They have her eye?
You know, she has only one eye in the representation, in the museum representation. She's always known as missing an eye. Mm-hmm. It's always been there. Where is this eye? Where is this eye? Well, apparently the Hermetic Brotherhood of Luxor is the one in charge of her missing eye. Now, let me just show for the people who I'm talking about, the one on the left, as you can notice here, doesn't have an eye. Mm-hmm. Now, that eye apparently is actually made probably of glass or something, and it is kept in a suitcase at all times by members of this order. One of them came on this boat on the Nile where I was, so I was testimony of it. And I tell you, it was a pretty weird group of people that included also a guy called Dr. Safwat, who exorcised me, who helped me fighting the people who were cursing me at that time. But I mean, these things happen. Now, you have to understand that Freemasonry arrived in Egypt, they say 1787, whatever. I have found in Egypt evidence and a photo which I published in volume 1 of my Confessions, which is the first Masonic sword in Egypt, 1777. It was buried for 3 days in the desert, and then to consecrate the first Masonic law. And nobody, and in fact, that photo, you remember, I gave to Giancarlo Seri as a gift. He wanted, you remember, he was like, please, can I have this photo? And who is still to this day the Grand Orient, the Grand Hierophant of the Memphis and Mizraim Sovereign Sanctuary, which is the only recognized Memphis and Mizraim body that works within regular Freemasonry. So when I went to Egypt, how I encountered this guy who then made me do the photo of his sword was even more incredible. It was like me and the son of Rauf Butrus Gali, Paul Bebralovic.
I didn't know you during this time.
No, I still have a bunch of photos of these crazy adventures we did back in Egypt. It was really some Indiana Jones kind of thing, like Bruce is saying in the chat. Not a joke, like unfortunately Joe Biden says, not a joke. Now, I came out of the Knights of Malta headquarters. I went to visit what used to be the Knights of Malta headquarters in Cairo, that were next to the office of Rauf Butrus Gali. Came down the stairs from this office, watched this place where the Knights of Malta were, walking this little road, turn like this, and in a shop that was selling obscure perfumes, things, there was this gentleman with a suit and a Masonic sword that was in display in the thing behind him that nobody could, you couldn't recognize if you were not a Mason. That was this. And that's how I entered the shop. I made myself recognized as a Freemason. He was so happy because Freemason is completely forbidden in Egypt, and even back then with Mubarak. So he hugged me and this and that. He said, this. And I said, wow, man, can I do a photo of this incredible sword? And then he explained he was an alchemist. He had all his laboratory there, apart from perfumes and things. And he was a really nice gentleman. I made a photo. Various photos, but the one with the volume 1, if you can pick me up, volume 1, there I can show our friends here who are watching this incredible. Now you have to understand that when Freemasonry arrived in Egypt, it also,
which one is it?
Volume 1, yes. When Freemason, no, volume 1, not that one. Well, that is the Italian one, but I guess it's the same.
Oh.
If you have the English one, it would be much better. But I guess this one, no, I think the English one probably has a better image.
Volume 1.
Yes.
This one.
Okay. So, no, this is the Italian one.
What?
You want some help?
Wait. One. Okay, this is American, right?
Okay.
It's purple.
Okay, so this is the photo which I was discussing with you guys. It's a little bit bigger in the English edition, so I prefer it to the Italian edition. Here it is. Now, this is the photo. I donated the original now to, and it even says the name of the guy who got me to photo. And if you buy the book, you can see the 1777. Sword dated 1777, photographed by the author in 2003 in Cairo, Egypt, in the alchemical laboratory of Brother Mason Mohammed F. El Gabri. So, there was at the end of the 18th century, with the arrival of Napoleon, who is said to have received also a special ring in Egypt and an initiation in the Brotherhood of Luxor and all that. There was, however, between legend and reality, a series of Masonic officers who were also officers of the Napoleonic army, who picked up, who wanted to give these Memphis and Mizraim rites that they were creating out of nothing, of thin air. The Sabbatian Frankists, they were also involved with it, but they were trying also to find legitimacy by connecting with ancient cults in the Middle East, ancient traditions, some secret societies nobody heard of, and they could include it in one of their many extractions of their many degrees. Because one thing that people have to understand is, like, with the 33 degrees of the ancient and accepted Scottish Rite, you have 33 degrees. But with the 1995, you have a whole bunch of other degrees, and so the opportunity of adding even more material. Now, another interesting thing that seems to have ruined Islam is the same Gnosticism that has attempted to ruin Judaism, bringing, Rabbi Anterman said that it was even involved, this embracing this Gnosticism by certain Jewish people brought even to the destruction of the Second Temple. Now, I don't know if we want to go as far as that, but there was definitely a conflict between two factions, and one was the more modernist and was proposing something also very much the Sadducees, embracing things that could have been close to Gnosticism. So I would say that we are with Gnosticism once again as the virus. It is a virus within Christianity. I have discussed this virus profusely in volume 9, or my latest book, no, Christy? Mm-hmm. In my latest book, I have a whole chapter regarding also Jesus and how the Illuminati and the Gnostics are manipulating Jesus' thoughts. But
it's one really good chapter, that.
Yeah. One thing that people have not really ever discussed so much and understood so much is the fact that also Islam was corrupted by Gnosticism.
What, really?
Absolutely. What happened with, for example, the establishment of what will lay further on the basics, all these people, like the one that we just mentioned, that was connected to Al-Afghani with Madame Blavatsky. I mean, Madame Blavatsky wasn't hanging out with people who were close-minded. Was hanging out with people who were more or less like-minded with her, like her. So there was Madame Blavatsky, but there was also all this knowledge that came from Gnosticism that in some way it's the fruit of occult knowledge that developed out of Afghani's influence. The Nazis and the Salafis, also the Nazis themselves are a Nazi sect. Are a Gnostic sect.
Oh, I was like, what?
The Nazis themselves, they are a sect. Of course, they were a sect before taking power. But they were with the Thule Gesellschaft and with all the various secret societies that helped the rise of Nazis. They were Gnostics. So,
these
Gnostics, even nobody will ever connect an organization like the Muslim Brotherhood that seems to be, this ultimate creation of, but instead it was forged as, it was basically something that I think David Livingstone said in his book, The Muslim Brotherhood is a London creation forged as the standard bearer of an ancient anti-religious pagan heresy that has plagued Islam since the establishment of the Islamic community Ummah by the Prophet Muhammad in the 7th century. So representing organized Islamic fundamentalism, the organization called the Muslim Brotherhood was officially founded in Egypt by the British agent Hassan al-Banna, who was also a Sufi mystic. So today, the Muslim Brotherhood is the umbrella under which a host of fundamentalist Sufi, Sunni, and radical Shiite brotherhoods and society flourish, not only Sunni. On top of that, another very interesting book, which I have in the other room, but I'm not going to go and pick up now, it's too complex, by Mehmet Ali Akshah, the guy who attempted to kill John Paul II. He talks about satanic groups operating at the highest level of Iranian society to this day. So Gnosticism has polluted in the last the Gnostics are the Illuminati. Just so we make it very simple, very plain for the profane individual. Okay? So you have the Gnostics polluting first Judaism, then Christianity arrives. They attempt to pollute Christianity. Of course, they attempt to pollute and infiltrate also Islam. On top of that, when the Sabbatean Frankists that themselves can be a Gnostic manifestation, if we want to, within the Jewish world, this whole creation is very much also connected to what the Sabbateans wanted to do, spreading their wings everywhere. So it is, I think, very important to understand that the Muslim Brotherhood is not just coming out of thin air. It's coming out of a very much, and then once it connects with the Al-Husseini and Adolf Hitler, it simply goes back to, it's like they are like-minded because they're all part, of the same. It's like Rudolf von Bottendorf. Now, let's go to another character that is important here in a story, because we couldn't talk about the foundation of Nazism without talking about Bottendorf and himself also. Rudolf von Bottendorf, born Rudolf Glauer in 1875. By the way, I always notice that these people, a lot of them are born in 1875, like Aleister Crowley. It seems like 1875 was the birth of the Theosophical Society, but also of a lot of evil people. So remember that it's all about divide and conquer at the top. So you can create opposing factions that fight against each other. That is, of course, a part of the intention of the Sabbatean Frankists. The Sabbatean Frankists devised what is known as the fourth great ritual. I will discuss this in a specific episode in which I will talk about the four great rituals that were done during the course of history to influence mankind. And the Sabbatean Frankists did the fourth ritual because they thought that from the 18th, 17th century, when the Sabbatean manifested, the whole mindset of people had to change. So they devised a ritual to change the mindset of people. And it's so insidious, guys. You don't even have an idea. I mean, the use of a specific algorithm, even it seems crazy stuff, but it is all this, of course,
evil.
The ritual and it's manifesting through, of course, what is happening around the world. Now, let's talk about this other guy who also was connected to Islam and fomented the roots of this evil. So let's go and pick up a very, very rare photo. It's, of course, very rare, so the quality is not that great. But you can see in the eyes of Adolf Hitler the admiration for Rudolf.
Totally.
You can see, it's like,
I love you so much.
I love you so much, Rudolph. Let's make a Nazi baby together. And now the thing is, this guy here that you see on the left, this guy here that you all see on the left is really an important figure. Rudolf von Sembotendorf basically was a theosopher, was influenced by theosophy. In 1917, he founds the Thule Lodge of the Germanic Order, which itself was connected and this here, of course, I want to repeat myself. So if you want to know more about how this group of people also influenced the whole spread of the lies of the protocols of the sages of Zion, because then that also arrives in the Middle East and is pushed.
Funny, everything just comes.
It's all together.
It's all connected, all of it.
All of it. Von Sembotendorf. Now, von Sembotendorf was himself only 19 when he started adventuring around the world. He went to Australia and landed in the year 1900 in Alexandria in Egypt. And at that point, he stayed in Cairo before reaching Istanbul, where he learned Turkish and worked at the service of an influential landowner, Hussein Pasha. It is not clear whether he fully converted to Islam, but in Turkey, he approached Islamic esotericism through the Mevlevi, the Sufi, the whirling dervishes, and thanks to Hussein Pasha, who practiced Sufism and allegedly introduced him to the secret of Muslim alchemists, still practiced by the Bektashi. Very important this, because in Bursa, a Greek Jewish family from Salonika, Dolmé, Sabatian Frankist, the Termudi, introduced him to Kabbalah, initiated him in a Masonic lodge of the Memphis Rite, founded by the Sabatian Frankists. It all comes together, no? Von Sembotendorf at that point believed that Islamic mysticism shared an Aryan origin with the Germanic runes. In 1914, he even wrote a book called Die Praxis der Alten Turki Freemason. And this is a book which I'm going to show you now. Here we are. It's a book that was published also in English. The Secret Practices of the Sufi Freemasons or Ottoman Freemasonry. Is nothing to do with the regular Freemasonry. But this book had the keys that gave the power of Adolf Hitler, so he could have that immense magnetic power. And it's all based about teachings that focus on transformation. You see here it says he moved to Terry, he met the Termudi family, the Rosicrucian, led the initiation of Masonic Lodge. Now, we don't have the confirmation if that Masonic Lodge was actually Macedonia resurrected. There was a particular lodge that was very influential, by the way, in that area where he actually moved, and it would be the lodge that will give the birth to the young Turks, Macedonia Risorta, which was working for a Sabbatean Frank, was under the control of the Grand Orient of Italy. But Italy shared a lot of things at the time with the young Turks that wanted to oppose the religious. It was like the Italians were trying to oppose the Vatican to unify Italy, and then they were opposing the religion in the Ottoman Empire to then re-embrace it later on, because nowadays Turkey is back into pan-Islamism. The book here, the text of 1924. Please, Christine.
Can you make it bigger?
Yes. Here we are.
Okay. The text of 1924 book titled Die Praxis
der Alten Türkischen Freemasonry. Freemasonry. Yeah, that's right.
Die Praxis der Alten Türkischen Freimaurer.
No, Freemasonry. Practice of ancient Turkish Freemasonry.
Is in itself unusual. Part of its content is well organized, clear, and concise, while other features are mixed with elements of confusing, chaotic nature. The
manual.
manual could have been even shorter. It really consists simply of a description and schedule of exercises to be conducted regularly over a period of many months. No concrete knowledge is imparted as to what these exercises will actually do for the individual, but it is clearly implied that the reward will be great and that all sorts of knowledge and wisdom will be imparted directly to the practitioner.
Now, it's very important this, because after the beer hall push, also known as the Munich push, the failed coup d'etat by the Nazi party, that brought basically, that was in Bavaria in November 1923, during the Weimar Republic. That was when Hitler escaped immediate arrest and was then spirited off to safety in the countryside. And then later on, he will be kept in Landsberg prison, where he dictated Mein Kampf to his fellow prisoners Emil Maurice and Rudolf Hess, his masterpiece of evil, Mein Kampf, which means my prison. And it's in that book that the Nazi propaganda reaches new levels, but it's also that you see that admiration. He was watching Sembotendorf was the head of his Germanen Order, racist lodge of the Germanen Order, this Stulle Gesellschaft. And so he was very much admiring, but also Rudolf Hess had introduced him to the practices of this book, which we have just mentioned, because these practices, guys, to this day are used by Satanists. And I'm gonna just explain you how, just by letting Christy read the last part of this introduction, because here you reach the point in which then everything makes sense, because today we are really digging deep.
Where this part right here?
Yes.
This book is intended to be nothing more than a translation of Sembotendorf's 1924 text with some explanatory information about the author, his ideas, and...
Okay, this you're gonna, but
I am not a Muslim or a teacher of Sufism. I am just a humble scholar. No insult, slight, or disrespect
but who is this guy?
Is ever intended towards Muhammad, the Quran, or Islam.
Perfect. Stephen E. Flowers. Yeah, he is basically sidekick to Michael Aquino for many years of the Temple of Set, and a total Satanist, and a guy who, of course, with Michael Aquino went to the Wewelsburg Castle to make those rituals to connect with the hidden masters, the secret chiefs of Madame Blavatsky and the whole bunch there, and their Tibetan masters. So you see, everything is connected. There is not like the whole thing. Everything is connected. And so for those people who today are there going around with their anti-Semitic rubbish without addressing the Sabbatian Frankist heresy, all this Nazism that led to millions of people dead. I mean, guys, you have to wake up a second, because here, I see my colleagues in the alternative media completely losing track of reality. I'm sorry that this.
Well, maybe they should have you on to straighten them out.
But it's, sometimes it's difficult for people to hear the truth and to understand. I mean, intellectual laziness is unfortunately a big problem. Now, it's like when it comes down to the truth, also about what is happening. Can you read this paragraph a second?
As for Muslims all across the world, the number who celebrated wildly was not small and included not just Palestinians and other Arab Muslims, but even non-Muslim Arabs like Lebanese Christians. An Italian journalist who happened to be in Beirut that day was stunned that 90%...
This here we are talking about the reaction to 9/11 of the Arab world.
That 90% of Arabs thought America had it coming, a response heard anecdotally from the celebrators and soon confirmed by an Egyptian poll that put that number at 91%. Even as the party-run press in Egypt told Mubarak's pro-American line, the opposition papers exulted, rejoicing is a national and religious obligation.
And of course, that opposition, and there was all the Muslim Brotherhood that was doing that.
The Syrian Arab Writers Association chairman wrote, I felt like someone delivered from the grave. My lungs filled with air and I breathed in relief. I'd never breathed before. Saudi doctors trained in America, often by Jewish doctors and their patients receiving Western medical care, clapped spontaneously at the sight on TV of the Twin Towers collapsing.
So let's make it clear here that when you are there saying free Palestine from the river to the sea, you are sustaining these people, you are sustaining these lies. Okay, I'm not saying Netanyahu is a saint. I'm not saying he's a saint, but of course, the first thing they would do after this whole military operation war that is ongoing will finish will be, of course, get rid of Netanyahu, because that's what they wanted to do for many years. I've been discussing it already in volume 3 of my confessions, that they were trying anything possible to get him out of it. So, but I'm not saying even that all his policies are right. But guys, the leftists and what they have been pushing and the hate they have been pushing for decades will never bring peace, and the solution of having two states, when we don't understand where all this hate is coming from, well, I'm gonna do what? Create another Arab state that basically goes and joins all the hateful Arab states that surround Israel, that are all broadcasting and pushing the protocols of the sages of Zion like the ultimate truth. It's really a little bit difficult here to find a solution when there is all this hate and all these lies. Guys, of course, we've been seeing the distraction of Gaza. This style of war, modern warfare, is completely destructive, and I personally would prefer another style of warfare, but I know that it's not easy to fight a militia which is hiding underground. However, just to point out on an image, in 2012, this dead child, was paraded by the head of Hamas and the Muslim Brotherhood Egyptian foreign minister from the Muslim Brotherhood. He was dead and he was paraded as a victim of Israel. The little child had been killed by Hamas a few hours before. So the lies, it's incredible. I mean, I know, guys, it's very easy Zionists to fall into all the hate that is continuous. Of course, today we have tried to explain things, and it's not easy, and probably I missed a lot of points. But it's important, I think, that we have showed you this connection, how for hundreds of years, over 1,300 years, the Muslims were living relatively peacefully, apart from when they attacked. Because the problem with Islam and their hate of the Jews in the Quran is completely instrumental to what was going on within their own tribal warfare that led to the expansion of Islam. Okay? The initial Quran apparently didn't have even any mention of the Jews, and then later on there is two different terms that are used within the Quran that can be applied to the Jews. But there is also different versions of the Quran, and some are worse than others. I went through versions of the Quran where the hate of the Jews was quite evident. I went through other versions where it was much less evident. So we know that the problem also with the evolution of Islam, on the contrary of Christianity, they never had a centralized kind of evolution of the whole religion, reforms, nowadays we have accepted the versions of the Bible of various kind, but with Islam has been a little bit more complex. However, the connections here between the rise of all this Islamic hate and Nazism and certain forms of Freemasonry connected to the Sabbatean Frankists that we already exposed, the Memphis and Mizraim in particular, connected directly to that forgery called the Protocols of the Sages of Zion, leads us to understand, I think, and have a more clear idea today of why then you had a guy like Husseini, the Grand Mufti, but also how we arrived to people like Ayatollah Khomeini, how we arrived to people like Al-Qaeda's Osama bin Laden, Osama bin Laden, who had all kinds of Masonic books in his library when he was killed, including the secret teachings of all ages of Manly Piol, or trying to understand the Illuminati, or trying to understand Freemasonry. Because the problem here, and with this, of course, we close, and this is a recognized problem by Muslims themselves. They are very quick to criticize Freemasonry, okay? But as soon as we do what we did today here, point out that there were Freemasons involved with their own faith, with their own religion, with the development of groups that, or brotherhoods like the Muslim Brotherhood, the Salafism, everything, that then they are, no, we don't talk about that. So it's very convenient for the Muslims to point and say, Freemasons, they're all evil. Well, let's talk also then about Jamal al-Din al-Afghani. Okay?
God doesn't like hypocrites.
You know, because otherwise...
God does not like hypocrites.
Let's talk...
If you want to obey God, then don't be a hypocrite.
Yeah, no. Who gave birth to the Salafi movement. Let's talk about Mohammed Amin al-Hussein and all his various connections with these Freemasons. Let's talk about Imam Hassan al-Banna. Let's talk about Mohammed Rashid Rida. I mean, one day, you know, this is a real story. And I'm gonna...
Maybe Jesus needs to come back to the Muslims too.
Yeah, of course, but this is a real story. One day, I brought a couple of Masonic magazines that talk about Imam Hassan al-Banna, that talk about, and I went to the local mosque, one of the local mosques in Oslo. I went there and I said, I'm a Freemason. And these were also Freemasons, and they were Muslims like you. The initial approach was a little bit like this, but then after they offered me dinner there, and they were all around me, and we talked for hours about all this, and they agreed with me on every single point. So let's come together, discuss our differences, but let's leave out the hypocrisy. Because nobody's a saint here, nobody claims to be a saint, but we need to understand that there is those people who have been claiming to be saints of this or this other religions who are definitely no saints.
You're going to knock our tree over.
Yeah. Okay.
That tree's been rocking all hour.
Okay. And I want to invite all those people who want to help us. First of all, Christy, to thank once again our sponsors today.
Okay, so thank you very much for everybody who sponsored the show today. Today we have Jason Strickland. Thank you very much, Jason. Adrian Tiaha. I hope I said that okay. You want to say Bjorn? Bjorn. I didn't live in a Norwegian country. So. Bjorn Vogel, Margarizada Minta, Bruce Kodish, and Philippe Beller. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, guys.
And everybody that bought the book, too. Thank you.
We are moving very fast towards the end of the season. We still have a few episodes before we end up exploring the Illuminati Occult series. Enjoy, of course, our next episode next Saturday with Leo and Christy Zagami.
I'm leaving Rambo over there because I don't want my shirt to get ripped because he's terrible. You see what he does to me, so he can stay over there.
You are right. What can I say? You are right. No, you are completely right. I mean, I want to thank, of course, Bruce, who gave me this excellent book. I also suggest you get maybe this book, but I'm also bringing out next year a new book, guys, that's going to have a whole section on what we're talking about today and much more, because really I'm fed up of all this nonsense of listening to all these idiots just not reaching any real conclusions. Why don't you be honest with yourself? If you don't know things, just, try to study them. And if you can't understand them, don't talk about them. But
a lot of people think they understand.
Let's leave out the anti-Semitism, first of all, because we already had a lot of damage because of that during the Second World War. We don't need to repeat any of that. And at the same time, the Islamophobia, okay, let's discuss Islam. Let's understand these people, but also they have to be honest intellectually and understand themselves. Okay? Because you cannot criticize, if you don't know yourself, others. You might have some real problem. So that's it. Okay. So, guys, let's...
can't hide from God. You better all be on your best behavior because God is watching. I'm on mine.
and then take care, guys. And we're approaching Christmas, so we're gonna be seeing you very soon in the even more festive period that will be next week. No? Mm-hmm. What's the date next week for next show?
I don't know. It's not on Christmas though. I think it's Saturday. Christmas is on Monday, so Christmas Eve is on Sunday. So Christmas Eve.
Okay.
Is on Saturday.
Okay.
So everybody dance. Clap your hands. Everybody dance.
And say for those people who were interested in Madame Blavatsky's connection with this important figure, who is, of course, today one of the protagonists of today's show, which we discussed profusely. I'm talking about Jamal al-Din al-Afghani. Well, he was basically, I mean, the same pub. The publisher, Madame Blavatsky, was very good friend of him, and they kind of got together after Blavatsky died and continued their collaboration. So, guys, this is like... Oh,
we're supposed to be dancing right now.
Oh, okay.
Oh. I was dancing by myself.
And buy this book! Especially this week when the Satanic Temple had their head chopped off, the head of their Baphomet chopped off in the Capitol Hill of Iowa. We're very happy about that. Purchase Leo Zagami's book, Volume 9.
Bye, everyone.
And Fight the Satanists.
God bless you.
Purchase this book for Christmas. Great purchase.
Hasta la vista, baby. Already dancing enough.
From Palm Springs, that's all. See you next week.